have 3 uterus stuff. My musical playlist just popped up. I don't know what that's about. I guess the computer wants to share things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, uterus 1, uterus 2.
Very nice. I like the eyes.
Which one do you like better?
I like the eyes on the second one. Yeah.
Another one's cute. Big eyes is very in. All right, we'll use the big eyes for you.
Sounds great. All right, I think we're live. So hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer. I'm an intern with Pandia Health, and I'm currently a sophomore at Stanford University studying human biology and on the pre-med track. And I'm here with Dr. Sophia Yen, who's the co-founder and CEO of Pandia Health, which is a woman-founded, woman-led company that's providing a birth control delivery service to anyone in the U.S. and also telemedicine consultations for prescriptions to those in Arizona, Wyoming, Texas, California, and Florida. And we're here today for Trendy Tuesdays to discuss some topics that we've heard from those who are interested in reproductive health. And we're just going to jump to those unless Dr. Yen, you have anything else to add?
No, I'm excited. Thank you so much for working with us at Pandia Health, and hopefully we'll answer some questions people have.
Sounds great. All right, the first question that we had was, am I supposed to be getting periods while taking birth control? And this person was also wondering, how can I tell if I'm on my period or if it's an implantation of an embryo? Is that something to be concerned with?
Yeah, so I think we'll break that into 2 questions. The first question is, if you're taking the birth control pill, patch, or ring, do you need to bleed every single month? And that is a key information that we're trying to get out to the world, that if you have a uterus and you are not trying to get pregnant, you don't need to bleed every single month. The only reason we bleed is we build that lining, we wait for an embryo, no embryo, and then we bleed. And then we build and we bleed and we build and we bleed. But if you're not trying to have a baby from age 12 to 26 on average in the United States, or 35 for those of us who had to get through med school or took a while to find a significant other or stabilize our lives, then why are you building and bleeding and building and bleeding? And every time you build, you risk endometrial cancer. Every time you pop out an egg, you risk ovarian cancer. And then there's also an associated increased risk of colorectal cancer. And the reason I do that is because you have your uterus, and then around your uterus, you have your colon. And so that is right next to it. And my thought is that this is sad and bleeding. And so your colon is having sympathetic sadness and changes in its lining, thereby increasing your colorectal cancer. But to go back to the question, that all those methods, the pill, the patch, the ring, the way they work is they hold up your hormones for 3 weeks and then they drop it. And then day 2 or 3 off your hormone, that's when you have this bleed. And that bleed is artificial. It's not, triggered by the normal method. It just dropped because you dropped it. And so if you kept the hormones going, you wouldn't have that bleed. And that bleed was put there by the founder of the pill because he was a devout Catholic and he was trying to get the method through the Catholic Church. I always forget that the Catholic Church allows a rhythm method. And so his theory was, if you could make the periods regular, right? Every 3 weeks, have a bleed, then you could practice the rhythm method perfectly. And he actually got it through the nuns, which is pretty awesome. The nuns are very liberal in general, so yay nuns. Then he got it through the priest, very difficult, but he got it through the priest. And then it hit the Pope figured it out and vetoed it. But because Dr. John Rock won that argument against his 2 co-founders who were PhDs, and I'm an MD, and Ms. John is a future MD, and I leave the research to the PhDs because I'm a doctor, I implement the research, and the PhDs do the research. But certainly I do research as well. But regardless, I trust them on the research. The 2 PhDs said, Dr. Rock, why are you making women bleed every month? It could be every 3 months, every 6 months. It could be never. But then he won the argument. And so because of that, every method since has had a bleed, 3 weeks of hormone and then 1 week of bleed, because he was trying to get to the Catholic Church, but also he had a bias. He thought that if women didn't bleed every month, they'd feel that's weird and they wouldn't accept it. So from his marketing brain, he thought it would market better. But if I'd been on that panel, or if a woman had been on the panel, or somebody with a uterus, I'm pretty sure we'd be like, no. Give the women choice. And so we're at Pandia Health, the only women-founded, women-led, the only doctor-led company in birth control delivery. We want to share with the world, you have a choice. You can bleed every month on the pill, the patch, the ring, or you can bleed every 3 months, every 6 months, or never. That is absolutely your choice. We're here to provide information and allow women to act upon that information according to their best interest, according to their choice, rather than withhold information or rather than give, false information. So if you're on the pill, patch, ring, you don't have to bleed every single month. One random caveat, if you're on the patch, you can only go 12 weeks without bleeding. Otherwise, the estrogen hormone builds up and then you have a risk of a blood clot and death. So after 12 weeks, you have to stop it for 7 days. During that 7 days, the hormones will drop, you'll have a bleed, and then you can restart again so that the estrogen doesn't build up and up and up and up, and you get a blood clot and you die. On the pill and the ring, you can go as long as you need to go. And so that answers the first question, I think. Mm-hmm. The second question was when I have a bleed, I think on the sugar pills or on the week that I'm off the medication. So if you have a pack of pills, 3 weeks is one color, 1 week is a sugar pill or some pill with iron sometimes in it, or some pill packs only have 3 weeks and then 1 week off. And they want to know if that bleeding, how do I know if I'm pregnant or if it's a withdrawal bleed? And if you are taking your birth control correctly every single day at the same time, plus or minus 3 to 5 hours, the likelihood of it being an implantation bleed is actually nil because it's the timing of the implantation bleed. So the way an implantation bleed happens is, one, an egg has to be released, a sperm has to meet the egg, and then it has to stick. And the way the birth control pill patch ring works is it kind of tells your body you're pregnant. It's like high level of hormone and your body's like, oh, okay, well, why would I try to pop out an egg? Because this is not the right hormonal thing to do right now. So no egg is popped. And without an egg popping out, you can't have it meet a sperm and you can't have it stick to your side. And therefore you can't have implantation bleed. Also, an implantation bleed would usually occur after the first day of your period. 14 days later, the egg pops out. And then 3 days after that, you'd have an implantation bleed. So the timing of the bleed just wouldn't be right for an implantation bleed. So again, I wouldn't worry about it being implantation bleed, though all things are possible and sometimes the birth control can fail, etc. But as long as you're taking it regular, and you're bleeding when you're supposed to bleed, which is on the sugar pills, if you take the sugar pills, then you would know if it's a withdrawal bleed. If it's a withdrawal bleed, if you came off your medicine 2 to 3 days. If you did not come off your medicine, then it's not a withdrawal bleed. And the implantation bleed is not likely if you're taking your pill regularly, and you have to look at the timing of the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and going back to your answer to the first question, I think the periods optional movement was one of the things that really appealed to me about Pandia Health, because I remember when I was sitting in my lecture series for women's health in the first quarter of college, and this topic came up, and we all kind of looked at each other. This was mostly women in the class, and no one had heard that it was possible to eliminate your periods before. And I just found it so surprising that this pretty basic piece of information wasn't more widespread. And I'm really happy to see that information being disseminated now.
Definitely check out our blog. We have a website, pandiahealth.com/periods optional. And on there, we have some infographics of how many women don't know that you can make periods optional. And at the bottom, we have my TEDx Berkeley talk on the science and safety of it. The main risk is that if you use an estrogen-containing method to stop your periods, because you can use a progesterone only. So the IUD with hormone, the implant, or the shot, these are all progesterone only. But if you use an estrogen-containing method, then you slightly increase your risk of breast cancer. But that increased risk of breast cancer, we've guesstimated it at about, if you don't have any periods at all, is 16 cases per 200,000 women. Cases of breast cancer, not deaths from breast cancer. And then to put that in perspective, if you drink 3 to 5 alcoholic drinks a week, that's an increased risk of 22 out of 200,000. So if you drink any alcohol, it's the equivalent of your increased risk for breast cancer. And the research has shown in several different papers that the decreased risk of endometrial, ovarian, and colorectal cancer is much bigger than the slight increased risk of breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But certainly if you have a family history of breast cancer, then maybe you want to be concerned about it and discuss it with your physician.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know it can be hard to contextualize statistics like that, but putting them in context helps with that decision-making process. All right, getting to the second question here. Someone asks, what happens if I'm getting my periods every 2 weeks? Am I okay?
Yes. So I'm assuming this person is not on the birth control pill patch ring. If you're on the birth control pill patch ring, if you're getting it every 2 weeks, then that medicine is not working for you. And you need to find a different pill. Know that there are 40 different pills. So if this pill doesn't work out for you, there's 39 other pills you can use. In general, there's 7 to 8 different progesterones, and that is the key ingredient. If you don't like the side effect on this progesterone, there are 7 or 8 other progesterones you can use. And then there's 2 levels of estrogen. So sometimes the estrogen's too low and you need a higher estrogen to stop that breakthrough bleeding. But oftentimes you'll need maybe a stronger progestational effect progesterone to stop that breakthrough bleeding again if you're on the pill. If you're on the patch or the ring, unfortunately, they come with the drug that's in them. So if that doesn't work for you, then that method's not going to work for you. If you're not on any medication and you're having a period every 2 weeks, that is too often. So a standard would be from the first day of one period to the first day of the other, not in between. Maybe in between that could be like 3 weeks, but it shouldn't be 2 weeks. But from the first day of one period to the first day of the other period, 28, maybe 25 if your life sucks, but 28 to 28 would be the earliest that we'd want to see. And so if it's every 14 days, that means you're bleeding 7 out of 14 days is theory-ish. So hopefully you're not doing that. If that's happening, then you need to see your physician. If it's a little spotting and you're not on any medication, that could be a sexually transmitted infection because you have a thing called the cervix, which is the bottom of the uterus. So here's your uterus, here's your cervix down here. And if it has like herpes or if it has warts or HPV, so now is the time to plug the HPV vaccine. Go get your HPV vaccine if you haven't gotten it. If you have warts or herpes or any kind of infection, then this part becomes irritable and it can bleed when you have sex. And so that might be a cause of bleeding that isn't full-on period bleeding. You could also have a polyp. So a polyp is just a part of your internal kind of thing, and it dangles out here, and it shouldn't be there. And if that gets banged up, then it can also bleed or bruise or whatever. So that would require a speculum exam that a doctor puts in a speculum, looks at it, and sees, oh, you have a polyp, and they can, tie it off or cut it or deal with it as necessary, or just watch it and see how it does. But if you have bleeding every 2 weeks, you should go see a physician and get that checked out. It could also be thyroid, but again, all these things need to be seen in person by a physician.
Right, and regardless of the underlying consequence there, I assume anemia would be a main concern that should also be evaluated there.
Yeah.
All right, and our last question here was, how long are periods supposed to last, and when is it a sign that I should be going to my doctor for a checkup?
Yeah, so I just answered that, I feel, on Quora or Reddit. If your periods are lasting greater than 7 days, that is not normal. If you are going through a tampon or a pad every hour, or more than 7 or 10 tampons or pads a day, then you should go see a physician, because we're afraid you're losing too much blood, you're bleeding out, and you should go. That's not normal. The number one cause of anemia in a menstruating woman is menstruation. And a lot of women, this is usually asked by younger women who are new to their periods, they might find out they have a bleeding disorder. The number one bleeding disorder that is found in menstruating women is von Willebrand's disease. And that they find out when they have their first or second period and they wake up and there's just a pool of blood from the bed because they were asleep and they bled a ton. A lot of menstrual blood is often on the darker side because it's just kind of old and it just was sitting there and it came out. If you're seeing bright red blood coming very, very fast, then you need to go to the ER or the emergency room and see a physician. If you are feeling tired, if your heart rate is going really fast and you're not just psyching yourself out, then that could be a sign that you have anemia, if you're feeling cold, tired, but that's also signs of depression, given COVID and given the latest smoke inhalation that we're going through here in California. Luckily, you don't have it in Washington. Those are other concerns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, I think that's all we have for questions. So is there anything else you want to close off with?
I think just check out our blog, check us out on YouTube. We have a bunch of different questions. If anybody has any questions, feel free to hit us up on Facebook, Insta, YouTube. Sign up for Pandia Health. Tell your friends about the only women-founded, women-led, only doctor-led company in birth control delivery. And then for anybody who doesn't need birth control, anybody with a uterus who's bleeding 1 week out of 4, definitely hit them up to check out Periods Optional.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, Dr. Yen, and have a great night, everyone.
Thank you so much for hosting.